My name is Julia Peterson. I'm a commissioned officer in the United States Army, specializing in aviation. I've flown helicopters through combat zones, navigated war zones in zero visibility, and made life or death decisions at altitudes most people will never experience. But at my family's dinner table, none of that matters. To them, I'm just Jules, the quiet daughter who never quite lived up to the Peterson standard. My older brother, Adam, is the one who gets the spotlight. Harvard Law, corporate board seats, a picture-perfect family, and a voice that somehow fills every room, even when he whispers. Growing up, it didn't matter what I accomplished. Adam brought home a B+. It was a celebration. I made the honor roll 3 years in a row, and no one blinked. I stopped expecting recognition somewhere around 10th grade, when my father laughed out loud at my acceptance letter to the ROTC program and asked if it came with a lunch tray. At first, I thought maybe they just didn't understand. I told myself they were more into traditional paths, that maybe law and finance felt safer to them. But as the years went on, and my career became more demanding, more elite, and frankly more dangerous, the silence from them only grew louder. They weren't cruel. They didn't yell or shame me directly, but they didn't ask questions either. Didn't want to hear about my mission or what it felt like to guide a Blackhawk through a dust storm at midnight. They'd rather talk about Adam's latest client win or his daughter's soccer team. There's a kind of loneliness that comes from being invisible in a room full of people who are supposed to know you best. It's like being trapped behind soundproof glass, watching a family play out a version of togetherness you were never truly invited into. I stopped trying to press my face against that glass a long time ago. What they don't know is that while they've been busy writing me out of the family story, I've been building something stronger than their approval. Something forged under pressure, shaped in steel and rotor blades. And that quiet daughter they dismissed? She's about to remind them exactly who she is. It was one of those picture-perfect spring afternoons, the kind that looks great in family albums. My parents had rented out the garden terrace of some upscale country club to celebrate Adam's promotion to managing partner. There were balloons, a catered bar, and even a string quartet playing covers of pop songs for that extra touch of class. Everyone was there. Distant cousins flew in from out of state, old college friends of my dad's who still called him Rick the Shark, and of course, every family friend who had ever watched Adam grow up and felt personally invested in his rise. I showed up late, straight from base, still half in uniform, under a blazer. No one noticed. I walked up to Adam, hugged him, and told him congratulations. He smiled, patted my back, and turned quickly to thank the couple standing behind me. I took a step back and melted into the scenery. I'm good at that. Being present but unseen is a skill I perfected years ago. The speeches started just as the second round of champagne was passed. My dad stood near the makeshift podium, his voice booming across the lawn. He was in his element, charming and confident, lifting his glass to toast his son, the pride of the Peterson legacy. The crowd clapped, and a few whistled. I stood to the side with a half-full glass, watching. Then he said it. And of course, we've got Jules here too, the pilot. He looked around, smirking like he was teeing up a punchline. Flies helicopters for the Army. Thinks she's some kind of space ranger now. Isn't that right, sweetheart? Little Miss NASA over here. Laughter rippled through the group. Something in me froze. Not out of shock I'd heard worse, but from the sheer predictability of it. He always delivered these little jabs, like they were harmless jokes, something everyone should laugh at and move on from. Like my job was a bit. I kept doing it, and he was humoring it until I snapped out of the phase. The man standing next to me, someone I didn't know, chuckled awkwardly and looked down at his drink. No one said anything to defend me. No one ever did. I stared straight ahead, not smiling, not blinking, not giving him the satisfaction of seeing me flinch. It wasn't about the words. It was about the dismissal underneath them, the years of accumulated nothings, the 1,000 tiny ways my life had been trivialized. I could have stood there and listed every mission, every medal, every night I spent awake planning extractions or rehearsing worst-case scenarios. But what would be the point? He didn't want to know. He never did. To him, I was a sideshow to Adam's spotlight. And in that moment, with champagne flutes raised and garden lights twinkling, I realized something sharp and irreversible. This wasn't just a family dynamic. It was a campaign of quiet erasure, and I was done letting it slide. At home, I'm Jules. Quiet, polite, easy to overlook. I know how to stay in the background, how to smile when spoken to, how to nod even when the conversation feels like it's happening in another language. In my family's world, that's the role I've always played. They don't ask about what I do. Not really. Occasionally, my mom will say something like, "Are you still flying those helicopters?" As if I might have switched to baking or real estate. It's not unkind, just distant, like they're watching my life from behind a glass wall, too far away to make out the details. But outside of that world, I go by a different name. Raven 3. That's the call sign stitched onto my flight suit. The voice crackling through comms when things go sideways. It's not just a label. It's who I become the moment the helmet goes on and the rotors start spinning. When I'm Raven 3, there's no space for doubt. I coordinate extractions, lead multi-bird formations through mountain terrain, and make decisions under fire, with lives depending on me. No one in command asks what my brother does, or if I'm dating. They ask for flight windows, air support times, and clearance codes. They trust me without needing to be convinced. I've flown through sandstorms so dense they swallowed daylight. I've hovered inches above cliff faces, keeping the bird steady while boots hit the ground below. I've memorized terrain maps of countries we're not allowed to name and briefed teams who don't blink when told the odds are low. In those moments, I'm exactly where I belong. And then I go home. I sit at long dining tables covered in roast beef and wine glasses, listening to Adam talk about merger law and quarterly earnings. My mother beams, my father nods like a proud general surveying his legacy. When I mention I just wrapped a 3-week joint training exercise with NATO forces, the conversation shifts before I finish the sentence. It's like living two lives that refuse to touch. One, where I am precise, respected, and necessary. The other, where I'm tolerated, maybe even pitied. The shift between them isn't physical. It happens inside me. A mental gear change, a recalibration of who I need to be to survive in each space. I used to think that balance was strength. Now I think it's damaged. Splitting yourself into pieces so others stay comfortable isn't grace. It's erasure. And I'm starting to wonder how much longer I'm willing to keep disappearing just to keep the peace. The sun was dipping lower, casting soft gold across the garden. Dessert had just been served, some kind of deconstructed pie with lavender foam, and the champagne was flowing again. People were laughing louder now, conversation more relaxed, as the initial formality of the party gave way to comfort. I sat at the edge of the table, barely picking at my plate. Adam was standing, gesturing as he told another story about litigation strategy that somehow made him sound like a war hero. Everyone leaned in, hanging on every polished word. I watched the way their eyes lit up when he spoke, the same way they dimmed when I opened my mouth. That's when the moment clicked into place. Not from anger, not from some childish need. To prove a point, it was colder than that. Clinical. The way I'd assess a map before a flight. A clean recognition of terrain. This wasn't a dinner party anymore. It was an operational problem. I pulled my personal secure comms from my jacket pocket and checked the grid I'd mapped earlier. The location was clear, the protocol was valid, and the window was open. It was risky, yes, but justifiable. I wasn't breaking rules. I was executing a demonstration. Not for them. For someone watching more closely than anyone else at that table. He sat across from me. DSS liaison. Civilian clothes. Calm posture, but his eyes missed nothing. We'd been introduced earlier, but only briefly. He hadn't said much since. Just observed. I knew his team would be under my care in 2 weeks. He was still assessing me, and thanks to my father's earlier remarks, that assessment was tainted. I needed to clear the air. I stood up slowly, tucking the device back into my pocket. My chair slid back with a soft scrape. No one noticed at first. Then my father looked up from his bourbon and raised a brow. "Off so soon?" he asked, voice loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Mission call from the toy squad?" I didn't answer. He leaned back in his chair, grinning now. "Don't forget your lunchbox this time, soldier. We don't want the army running out of cookies." A few chuckles. Some eyes flicked toward me, unsure if they should laugh or not. Still, I said nothing, just looked at my watch. Calm and deliberate. I saw the DSS agent glance down at his own wrist, mirroring me. Good. He was paying attention. I started walking toward the open lawn. My steps were steady, not rushed. There was a breeze picking up, tugging gently at the tablecloths and the edges of napkins. I could feel eyes on my back, the shift in the room, the subtle unease of something they couldn't name. No one knew what was coming, but I did, and so did the man who mattered. I wasn't leaving to make a point. I was clearing the airspace. The phone in my pocket wasn't a phone. It was a hardened comms device with a secure satellite uplink, assigned only to officers with direct authority over rapid deployment protocols. I thumbed it awake, the screen glowing softly in the dusk. My breathing was steady, heart rate even. This wasn't adrenaline. This was execution. The system asked for authentication. I entered my code, then scrolled through the classified menu to the protocol index. Directive 47C. Emergency Coordination Drill. Civilian Zone. Last resort, rarely used, but fully within my authority. It was designed for joint readiness tests, coordination between military and interagency teams in unstructured environments. Perfectly legal, extremely disruptive, precisely what I needed. I composed the request like a mission brief: brevity, clarity, no emotion. Requesting immediate asset deployment, coordination assessment, Raven 3, target zone grid 904. B. Conditions: unsecure, semi-civilian, open terrain. Justification: field validation of rapid air coordination readiness. Critical evaluation required by embedded interagency observer. I paused, then added, recommend Blackhawk. No escort. It would make the point cleaner. No noise, just the machine and its mission. I hit send. The response took 20 seconds. Approved. ETA 7 minutes. Maintain LZ. Asset: Valkyrie Ain. I closed the device and returned it to my pocket. My hand lingered for a second, not from doubt, but to register the weight of what I'd just done. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't a theater. It was containment. My father's careless words had created a ripple I couldn't afford. I wasn't cleaning up my image. I was re-establishing operational trust. The DSS agent knew exactly what this was. His eyes never left me as I stepped back onto the lawn. I gave him a nod, short and precise. His response was immediate. A shift in posture. Full attention. Message received. Across the lawn, my father still had his drink in hand. Someone was telling a story. Laughter rolled across the tables like waves. They were all still in the dream. They had no idea what was moving above them now, or how close it already was. I kept walking toward the center of the field, slow, measured, waiting for the sky to respond. It started with a vibration, subtle at first, a deep rhythmic thrum I could feel in the soles of my shoes before I heard it. Heads turned, puzzled. A few people glanced at their phones, assuming it was construction, maybe distant thunder. It wasn't. The sound grew fast, thickening into a heavy, chest-deep roar, the kind that rolls in like weather and doesn't ask permission. I saw napkins lift off the tables, Champagne flutes trembled. Conversation faltered, then stopped entirely. People stood, shielding their eyes, scanning the sky. Then it came. A matte black silhouette dropped out of the blue like a blade through silk. The Blackhawk. No markings, no hesitation. It didn't circle or hover cautiously like civilian aircraft. It descended with surgical precision, banking hard over the tree line, straight toward the center of the garden. The air snapped with energy as it cut through, blowing flower arrangements and linen napkins into the air like confetti. The rotor wash hit the party like a hurricane. Plates shattered. Tablecloths tore free. A woman screamed as her hat flew off and vanished across the lawn. Kevin's notes, carefully printed for a post-toast speech, scattered in every direction like white birds in panic. The Blackhawk held at a 3-foot hover. No skids touched the grass. Just raw power, suspended in perfect balance. The open side door revealed 2 crew chiefs in full flight gear, helmets down, visors black, unmoving. Their presence wasn't dramatic. It was surgical, like a scalpel laid carefully on the edge of a wound. I turned then, finally, to face them. My mother stood frozen, one hand gripping her wine glass, the other clutched at her necklace like it might keep her grounded. Her eyes were wide. No fear. Just disbelief, like her brain couldn't reconcile what it was seeing with who she thought I was. Kevin looked like he was still trying to speak, lips parted mid-sentence, hands half raised. He hadn't moved. The wind had taken his voice before he even formed the words. And then there was my father. He stood with both feet planted, face pale, drink forgotten at his side. The smirk was gone. In its place was something rawer. Shock, yes, but also confusion, like he was watching a stranger walk out of his daughter's skin. He met my gaze. I held it. 1 second, 2. I nodded toward the aircraft, just once. Then I turned my back on them and walked into the storm. The wind tore at my clothes as I moved forward. Each step was steady, deliberate. I didn't run. I didn't look back. Behind me, the party was in chaos. Plates on the ground, people shouting over the roar, wine-stained linens flapping like torn sails. But I heard none of it. I reached the edge of the rotor wash and paused. The crew chief leaned out, extending a gloved hand. I grabbed it, clipped in, and pulled myself inside with the precision of habit. The door remained open. Noise flooded in, wild and raw. I turned my head, just once, toward the lawn. My father was still staring, mouth open, eyes wide. He looked like he had seen a ghost. I didn't smile at him, or a wave, just words. That's my ride. And then I was gone. 6 months later, I stood at the front of a briefing room with 4 walls of concrete and no windows. A digital map glowed behind me, filled with grids, timestamps, and predicted flight paths. The chairs were full. Operators, analysts, and commanding officers, all locked in, all listening. I walked them through the air insertion plan. Clear, crisp, no filler. Every detail had been tested, rehearsed, and refined. I knew the terrain. I knew the threats. And I knew how to get our people in and out with a clean footprint. When I finished, I opened the floor for questions. Silence, for a moment. Then the DSS agent from the garden party stood up. Same man, different eyes. He didn't look at his notes, didn't hesitate. Her air support is mission critical, he said. Full trust, no reservations. No one argued. I didn't smile. I didn't need to. Respect, the real kind, doesn't come with applause. It shows up in who gets the final word, who they turn to when the stakes are high. And in that room, they turned to me. Not because of a last name, not because I demanded it, but because I earned it. Flight by flight, mission by mission, 1 inch at a time. That's all I ever needed. It came late at night. My personal phone buzzed once on the desk, screen lighting up in the dark. One message. No emojis, no punctuation. Cái người trong bản tin huấn luyện hôm nọ có phải là con không? I stared at it, not with anger, Not even surprise. Just a kind of quiet recognition. It was the first time he'd asked about my work without a smirk attached. The first time, the question wasn't laced with a joke, but it was also too late. I held the phone in my hand for a long moment. The room was silent, except for the hum of the server rack behind me. I didn't reply. I didn't type. I didn't even sigh. I just tapped once, archived the message, and kept working.